7 prophecies of Daniel that are about to be fulfilled before our eyes. What if I told you that the script for the next 5 years of human history was written over 2 millennia ago by a prisoner of war in a land we now call Iraq? What we're seeing on the news isn't random chaos, but the frightening precision of gears that began turning the moment Daniel had his first vision. Most people are looking in the wrong place, caught up in superficial political discussions, while the prophetic clock has just unlocked its final mechanism. Daniel wasn't just a prophet. He was a strategist of God who saw the DNA of empires before they were even born, and what he says about our times is so shocking that most world leaders prefer to ignore it. If you feel that something has shifted in the world's atmosphere, that the tension isn't just political but existential, you're not going crazy. You're simply perceiving the fulfillment of the first of 7 prophecies that lie before us. But before we reveal what the little horn is doing to the global economy today, you need to understand that the YouTube algorithm rarely delivers this kind of warning to the masses. If you're here, it's because you're part of a remnant seeking the truth. So click the like button now to signal that this alert needs to keep circulating. Nebuchadnezzar awoke one night in utter panic. The most powerful man in the ancient world, the emperor who commanded armies capable of devastating entire nations, was terrified by a dream he couldn't remember. He only knew that the dream contained something crucial, something that would define the fate of all human civilization. It was then that Daniel entered the scene, not only recalling the forgotten dream, but decoding the complete blueprint of world history. The gigantic statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw was not just an impressive image. It was an exact chronological map of the empires that would dominate the earth until the end of time. The head of gold represented Babylon. The chest of silver was Media Persia. The belly of bronze symbolized Alexander's Greece. And the legs of iron were Rome. But this is where the prophecy becomes frighteningly relevant today. The statue's feet were made of iron mixed with clay, an impossible alloy to hold together. Daniel said that this would be the final stage of human civilization before total collapse, a system where military power and social fragility would coexist in a paradoxical way. Look at the world today. The European Union, NATO, the United Nations. All these international organizations are desperate attempts to rebuild the unifying force that Rome once had. But why can't any of them stand? Because you can't mix iron with clay. You can't force nations with diametrically opposed cultures, conflicting economic systems, and antagonistic geopolitical agendas to remain united. Europe struggles to hold itself together while nationalisms explode on every border. The United States, the last great Western empire, is internally fractured in a way we haven't seen since the Civil War. China is trying to emerge as a new superpower, but faces a catastrophic demographic crisis and a housing bubble that could implode its economy at any moment. We are living precisely on the feet of iron and clay. And Daniel said that a stone cut without human hands would come and crush the entire statue, pulverizing earthly empires once and for all. This stone is not a poetic metaphor. It is the direct intervention of the kingdom of God in human history. And the noise you are hearing is the sound of that stone being thrown. But the vision of the statue was only the beginning. Decades later, Daniel had another revelation, this time far more disturbing. He saw 4 beasts emerging from the raging sea, each more grotesque than the last. A lion with eagle's wings, a bear devouring ribs, a leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings, and finally an indescribable beast with 10 horns and iron teeth that crushed and devoured everything. These were not creatures from a horror film. They were symbolic representations of the same empires as the statue, but now revealed in their true bestial nature. Babylon was the lion, a symbol of royal power but also of predatory ferocity. Media Persia was the bear, slow but relentless, devouring territories like a hungry animal. Greece was the swift leopard, representing the speed with which Alexander conquered the known world in just 13 years. But the fourth beast had no parallel in nature because Rome transcended all previous empires in brutality and reach. Here's what most people don't realize. This fourth beast never completely died. Rome fell geographically, but its legal system, its governmental structure, its language, and even its official religion migrated and transformed. What governs the West today is not democracy in the Athenian sense. It's an adapted Roman republic. What we call international law is essentially codified Roman law. The 10 horns of the beast represent 10 kings or kingdoms that would arise from this Roman structure. And when you observe the attempts at European unification since the 1950s, when you see economic blocs and military alliances constantly being reorganized, you are seeing the 10 horns trying to establish themselves. But among these 10 horns, Daniel saw something that chilled the blood. A small horn would arise, different from the others, and uproot 3 horns to make room. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth that spoke great things. This is the Antichrist, and the prophecy says that he will speak against the Most High, persecute the saints, and try to change the times and the laws. Now pay attention because this is critical. This leader will not emerge as an obvious villain. He will appear as a problem solver, a political genius who will finally bring the peace that humanity so desperately desires. He will propose a unified economic system that will end inequality. He will present a technological solution to global security. And most people will love him because he will promise exactly what they want to hear. But behind the rhetoric lies the same spirit that animated the Roman Caesars when they demanded worship like gods. Look at how digital identification technology is advancing. Look at how central bank digital currencies are being quietly implemented in dozens of countries. Look at how social credit systems already operate in some nations, determining who can buy, sell, or travel based on compliance with the state. Daniel saw this 2,600 years ago. He saw a system where control would be so absolute that it would change even the perception of time and moral law. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I need you to understand that every time you agree to yet another layer of digital surveillance in the name of security, you are paving the way for that system. And here I need to pause, because if this warning is making sense to you, there's a strategic reason for you to interact with this video right now. YouTube doesn't promote content that challenges established narratives unless engagement is massive. The truth is that this type of prophetic analysis is actively suppressed by algorithms that prioritize superficial entertainment. So if you want more people to wake up to what's happening, you need to like and comment anything below, even if it's just an exclamation point. Every interaction is a vote for the truth to circulate. I'm not asking this out of vanity. I'm asking because time is running out and most people are still asleep. Now, let's move on to the most mathematically precise prophecy ever given to humanity. Daniel received the revelation of the 70 weeks, an exact chronology that would mark the moment of the Messiah's coming and what would happen afterward. 70 weeks of years, or 490 years, were decreed upon Israel. The count would begin with the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, issued by Artaxerxes in 445 BC. 69 weeks, or 483 years, would lead until the Messiah. And when you calculate using the prophetic calendar of 360 days, you arrive exactly at the moment when Jesus entered Jerusalem in the celebration we call Palm Sunday. The precision is not a coincidence, it is divine signature. But then the prophecy says something disconcerting. After the 69 weeks, the Messiah would be cut off, killed, and would have nothing. The people of a prince who would come would destroy the city and the sanctuary. This literally happened in 70 AD when Titus's Roman legions razed Jerusalem. But wait, the prophecy spoke of 70 weeks, not 69. Where is the last week? Herein lies the mystery that defines our era. There is a hiatus, a pause in the prophetic clock. The 70th week has not yet occurred. It is a 7-year period that will begin when the Antichrist makes a pact with many, likely some kind of Middle East peace agreement involving Israel. In the middle of that week, he will break the pact, desecrate the temple, and unleash the final tribulation. This means that everything that has happened in the last 2,000 years is a prophetic parenthesis. The clock is stopped, but the signs indicate that it is about to restart. Israel was reinstated as a nation in 1948, something that was historically impossible. Jerusalem was recovered in 1967. Talk of rebuilding the Third Temple is no longer a conspiracy theory. There are organizations training priests and manufacturing temple utensils right now. When the clock restarts, the last week will be unleashed, and it will be the most chaotic period in human history. And this brings us to the prophecy about the king of the north versus the king of the south, a geopolitical prediction so detailed that many scholars have tried to argue that Daniel must have been written after the events because accuracy was impossible. Daniel saw a series of conflicts between the northern kingdom, represented by the Seleucid dynasty based in Syria, and the southern kingdom, represented by the Ptolemies based in Egypt. He described specific battles, failed marriage alliances, and political betrayals that would happen centuries later with photographic precision. But the prophecy doesn't end in the past. Daniel speaks of an end time when the king of the south will provoke the king of the north, who will respond like a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and many ships. He will invade the glorious land, which is Israel, and extend his power over many countries, including Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia. Look at the geopolitical map of 2024 and 2025. Who is north of Israel? Russia, Turkey, Syria, Iran. Who is south? Egypt, Sudan, North African nations. Now observe the alignments. Russia has established a permanent military presence in Syria. Iran is building a land bridge through Iraq and Syria to Lebanon. Turkey, a NATO member but increasingly aligned with Eastern interests, is playing both sides. From the south, you have chronic instability in Egypt, civil war in Sudan, and radical Islamic movements gaining territory. And at the center of it all is Israel, small, geographically vulnerable, but prophetically essential. Every conflict we see erupting in this region is not just about oil or territory. It is the fulfillment of a choreography written when ancient empires still dominated the world. The kings are positioning themselves exactly where Daniel said they would be. But there is something even more disturbing in Daniel's prophecy. He speaks of the abomination of desolation, an event so horrific that Jesus Christ himself referred to it as the ultimate sign that the end was near. Daniel says that in the middle of the 70th week, the daily sacrifice will be interrupted and the abomination will be set up. Historically, this already happened once when Antiochus Epiphanes, a type of the Antichrist, desecrated the temple in 167 BC by sacrificing a pig on the altar and erecting a statue of Zeus in the holy place. But Jesus said that was only a preview. The final abomination would happen in the future. And Paul elaborates by saying that the man of lawlessness will sit in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. This requires a physical temple in Jerusalem, something that has not existed since 70 AD. And here's where geopolitical engineering gets scary. There are active movements working to rebuild the Third Temple exactly where the original stood. The problem? The Dome of the Rock, one of Islam's holiest sites, is in that exact spot. Any attempt to remove or alter that structure would trigger an instant regional war. But what if there's another way? Some archaeologists argue that the original temple stood slightly north of the Dome of the Rock's current position, meaning both structures could coexist. What if a peace agreement allowed for the temple's reconstruction on the condition that the Islamic sites remained untouched? This would be hailed as the diplomatic miracle of the century, the ultimate proof that peace in the Middle East is possible. But it would be precisely the scenario that would allow the Antichrist to forge his peace pact, initiate the 70th week, and eventually desecrate the temple by declaring himself God. The path to abomination is being paved with seemingly good intentions. Modern technology has made this even more plausible. Imagine a world leader who not only makes a peace agreement, but implements a global digital identification system that allows access to the new temple, facilitates international trade, and promises unprecedented security. Now imagine that in the middle of the process, this same system is used to demand worship, to separate the loyal from the dissident. Daniel saw this without fully understanding the mechanism because he lacked the vocabulary for artificial intelligence, blockchain, biometrics, or central bank digital currencies. But he saw the result: a system where buying and selling would be impossible without total compliance, where freedom would be traded for survival, where the very definition of humanity would be redefined. And before you dismiss this as dystopian science fiction, remember that social credit systems already operate by tracking every transaction, every movement, every social interaction. The infrastructure already exists. All that's missing is the right leader to unify it under a seemingly noble cause. I need you to understand something. If you've made it this far in this video, you're not here by accident. There's a battle raging in the invisible realm for your attention, for your awakening, for your soul. The forces that want to keep humanity asleep work tirelessly to distract, numb, and confuse. But you've broken through the bubble. You're seeing what few can see. Now you have a responsibility. Share this video with at least 3 people you know who are searching for answers. It doesn't matter if they initially agree or disagree. The simple act of planting the seed of prophetic consciousness can change someone's eternal trajectory. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it now, because the content coming will connect dots you didn't even know existed. Now we come to the final prophecy, the one that should bring simultaneous terror and hope. Daniel speaks of the resurrection of the dead, a moment when all who sleep in the dust of the earth will awaken, some to eternal life and others to eternal shame. This is not merely a vague religious belief about the afterlife. It is a clear statement that human history has a definite endpoint where accounts will be settled and justice will be served. Daniel says that those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever. But those who practice wickedness will awaken to realize that they wasted their entire existence serving the wrong side of the cosmic war. What makes this terrifying is the irreversibility. We live in a culture that loves second chances, that believes everything can be renegotiated, that there are no permanent consequences. But the resurrection exposes this lie. There is a final line. There is a moment after which the choices are sealed, and Daniel indicates that this moment is connected to the end of the 70th week, to the climax of the tribulation, to the visible return of the Messiah to establish his kingdom. This means that all other prophecies are essentially countdowns to this final event. When you see Nebuchadnezzar's statue on feet of iron and clay, when you see the little horn arising, when you see the king of the north mobilizing against Israel, when you see the preparation for the temple, you are not just observing political events. You are watching the stage being set for the final act of human history before the resurrection. And here's the twist no one wants to face. Daniel was instructed to seal the book until the time of the end, when knowledge would increase and many would be scrambling to and fro. We live in that time. The amount of information available to anyone with a smartphone exceeds all the accumulated knowledge of humanity up to the 20th century. Journeys that used to take months now take hours. Instant communication traverses the planet in seconds. And yet, despite all this knowledge, most people are more confused than ever, rushing from one distraction to another, unable to discern what truly matters. The increase in knowledge has not brought wisdom. It has brought informational chaos. And in the midst of this chaos, Daniel's prophecies offer the only coherent narrative that explains the past, illuminates the present, and reveals the future. But look, this isn't a video meant to cause paralyzing panic. This is a wake-up call to provoke strategic action. Daniel not only saw what was coming, he survived amidst the most brutal empires in history by maintaining his unwavering loyalty to God. He was thrown into the lion's den and emerged unscathed. His friends were thrown into the fiery furnace and didn't even smell of smoke. They proved that it's possible to weather the collapse of civilizations without being destroyed by them. The question isn't whether you will face tribulation, because we all will. The question is which side you will be on when the dust settles. Daniel and his friends made choices that seemed like madness at the time. Refusing the king's food, refusing to worship the statue, refusing to pray to the imperial decree. All of this was political and physical suicide. But each act of obedience opened a supernatural door of protection, and that is exactly what the 70th week will demand. It will not be a time for lukewarm Christians who want God's blessings without commitment to God. It will not be a time for consumerist spirituality where you take what you like and ignore what bothers you. It will be a time for people who choose to die standing rather than live on their knees. Daniel saw this. He saw a time of tribulation such as has never been since nations existed. He saw the Antichrist wage war against the saints and prevail temporarily. But he also saw the end of this war, when the Ancient of Days would sit in judgment and dominion would be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. Victory has already been decreed. The question is whether you will be among those who resisted or among those who bowed down. Look around. The world is being prepared to accept solutions that would have seemed totalitarian at any other time, but which are now sold as progress. Digital identity, digital currency, smart cities, constant monitoring, all under the guise of efficiency and security. And most people will accept it because the alternative, living outside the system, will seem impossible. But Daniel shows us that there is always a remnant that chooses the impossible. There are always those who prefer the lion's den to conforming to the lie, and these are the ones who will shine like stars. Not because they were perfect, but because they chose to stay on the right side of the line when the line was drawn. So here's your choice. You can close this video, return to the endless distraction the algorithm offers, and pretend none of this matters. Or you can acknowledge that you've been confronted with information most people will never have access to, not because it's secret, but because it requires humility to admit you don't have all the answers and courage to seek the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Daniel wasn't smarter than his contemporaries. He was more obedient. He fasted, prayed, and refused to be contaminated by the Babylonian system around him. And because of that, God revealed mysteries to him that kings and wise men couldn't understand. The same is available to you. You don't need to be a theologian or have years of biblical study. You only need an honest heart that is willing to say, I don't know what to do with this information, but I want to understand. I want to be prepared. I want to be on the right side when the final chaos arrives. And if you pray this prayer sincerely, without cynicism, only with a genuine desire to know the truth, you will discover that Daniel's prophecies are not just about future events. They are about revealing God's character, His faithfulness, His sovereignty over empires, and His love for those who seek Him even when the whole world is going in the opposite direction. The 7 prophecies we explore are not isolated stories. They are an interconnected system that maps the entire human trajectory from Babylon to the eternal kingdom. The statue shows the progression of empires. The beasts reveal their true nature. The little horn identifies the final antagonist. The 70 weeks establish the chronology. The king of the north and the king of the south demonstrate the geopolitical conflicts that will precede the end. The abomination of desolation marks the midpoint of the final week. And the resurrection declares that all of this has an eternal purpose. We are not adrift in a meaningless universe. We are in a narrative written by an author who sees the end from the beginning and who invites you to consciously participate on the side of redemption. So what do you do now? First, you stop passively consuming information and start actively studying. Read the book of Daniel on your own. Compare it to the events you see in the news. Second, you strengthen your spiritual convictions because they will be tested in ways you can't imagine. Third, you connect with a community of people who are also awake, because you will need support when the pressure to conform becomes unbearable. And fourth, you live each day as if it were your last before the prophetic clock starts ticking again, because it might be. Daniel lived in captivity his entire life, but ended his days as one of the most influential men in the most powerful empire on earth. He proved that you don't need to control circumstances to have an eternal impact. You only need to remain true to what is true, even when everything around you is crumbling. The prophecies he received weren't meant to scare him. They were meant to prepare him. And if you've made it this far, you've already taken the first step. Now keep walking, keep seeking, keep resisting, because what comes next will separate those who truly believe from those who only pretended to believe. And when the dust settles, when the final week ends, when the resurrection happens, you'll want to be among those Daniel saw shining like the stars forever and ever.